Hello, I'm Tommy Satina. I'm here doing my third and final video log for this global learning project. My partner for this project is still Gilchrist Island, who is from the Ivory Coast. Um, for our last meeting, I decided to attend one of Gilchrist's intramural football games. It turned out being the semifinal game, so it was pretty big. It was um, on Sunday the 25th. But yeah, so before we went to the game, Gil and I were just playing catch outside of my house. There's a picture of Gil throwing the ball. Um, yeah, he was pretty hyped up about the game. However, during the game, Gil he went head to head with someone and got a pretty bad gash on his forehead. Here's a picture of him with me and one of my buddies. Unfortunately, Gil had to go get stitches after the game, but before he left the game, he ran for a touchdown and threw a touchdown. So that was great. It turns out his team ended up losing this, so that was pretty unfortunate. But anyways, after the game and after Gil got stitches, kind of sat down and talked with Gil for a while, and I was asking if he had football in the Ivory Coast, and it actually turns out that he doesn't, which is kind of surprising because he's so good, and you would think he played it all his life. Um, but yeah, the reason for him, like Ivory Coast not having football is because apparently most of the country is really poor. Gil was Gil's family was considered in the upper class there in the Ivory Coast, but it turns out that there's either the upper class or the lower class, which is very interesting to me because here in the United States, so much of our population falls into that middle class. So it's just kind of like eye opening that there's such a big drop off from the upper class to the lower class. Yeah, so he was talking about how that only the major cities have electricity, while other like minor cities in the country have to rely on generators for their electricity, and that was pretty eye opening to me because um, here in America we rely so heavily on our electricity. We use it for so much. I can't imagine living in a place where you rely on generators, which can so often go out and stuff. But yeah, Gil was talking about how fortunate he was to have left the Ivory Coast at the age of 4 because he never really got to experience any of the poverty that lied within the country. But yeah, after after Gil and I left that night, I was still wondering. I had a couple more questions that I had forgotten to ask him. My first was, I was very curious to see of any places of poverty in the Ivory Coast. He mentioned his dad had photos, but um, he never got around to showing me them, and I was actually very curious as to like what it looked like and how it compares to the places of poverty here, and in other places of the world. Another question I had was, what other sports does the Ivory Coast have? Because he mentioned they had basketball, but he also mentioned that they did not have football. There are some sports here that cost a lot more money than other sports, such as like football is pretty expensive compared to soccer. So I was kind of curious as to what other sports Gil and his siblings played while he was in the Ivory Coast, but I never really got around to that. So hopefully, if I see him again, I can kind of talk about that. This whole experience has been pretty eye opening to me. I got like a whole different perspective on the world just because of what Gil had said about where he came from, and um, really this experience taught me a lot because there are places out there that are not as fortunate as we are, and we I'm extremely grateful for what I have. So